Well, good evening and welcome to the Friday Night Sports Bar. We've got a gentleman patiently waiting on the line from South Africa. The gentleman is no stranger to the sports show. He's been in the studio with us beforehand. He's joined us on the line on a few occasions. It's none other than former Manchester United and England goalkeeper Gary Bailey, presenter on Supersport, ambassador for the successful World Cup bid in South Africa, motivational speaker, and now author of a new book, Succeed Under Pressure. Gary Bailey, a warm welcome back to the show this evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, Dom, very, very well. Thank you. Nice to chat to you, and I hope you've had a lovely summer over there in Spain.
Well, actually, we were just talking about that very briefly in the break. It's turning summer in your part of the world, and it's turning winter in this part of the world. So, unfortunately, we can't have the best of both.
True, but I always enjoy the summers. I love Marbella and Puerto Banús and all those areas. It's awesome there in July and August.
Gary, we've got a couple of lads in the studio. Richard, of course, you would have met the last time you were out here, so I'm sure he's going to be joining in. Stuart Joseph, who's our football expert, who would probably do a pretty good job on Supersport, I'm sure. He'll be joining us in the conversation. But most importantly, many congratulations on the release of your new book, amongst many other things that you've had the privilege of doing very successfully in your career. Succeed Under Pressure. It's only just recently, I believe it was last Friday, that was released in the UK or around Europe and around various parts of the world, but in South Africa a little while beforehand. Gary, congratulations, and tell us about the book.
Well, really, it's just a case of I've learned how to perform under pressure, by being at Man United, and I think also as a goalkeeper, you're forever under pressure. You can't make one mistake. Messi can score a hat-trick one week and doesn't score the following week and he's off the hook. You can have a brilliant game as a goalkeeper, next game you drop a clanger and the whole world's on your back. So I've learned certain techniques to deal with pressure, and then I've had the privilege of playing for probably the greatest manager of all time in terms of dealing with pressure, and that's Alex Ferguson. So what I did was I put all that knowledge together with the professor at Henley in Oxford, where I did my MBA, and I thought, well, let's do a business book. Rather than a sports book, let's do a business book that involves a lot of sports examples and is a fun read, and hopefully that's what we've managed to produce.
I certainly know, Gary, and maybe there's a lot of listeners out there that know or don't know, but of course in your background as well, leading in this book, you've been a motivational speaker in the past very successfully, especially leading up to the very successful bid that you were very much part of in the World Cup. I mean, would that all tie into the book as well?
Yes, yeah, true. It actually started with the book. I was doing talks for all the corporates about what can you learn from sport. I mean, there's no more pressurized business than probably English football. I reckon the stats are around about 1/3 of all the managers across the professional leagues get sacked or resign every single year. And there's no business in the world that has that sort of attrition rate and that pressure. So, if Sir Alex can survive 26 years and win 37 odd trophies, he must know how to handle pressure. And I've fortunately been able to work with him, to watch him, to see what he does. None of it's rocket science. He actually wrote the foreword for my book, and he just says, look, it's all simple, basic, managerial things that you have to do. So, anyone can buy this book, read it, and I believe they can take a lot of good knowledge from here as to how to deal with pressure. And let's be honest, everywhere in the world, and Spain included, we're all under huge financial and business pressure at the moment.
I mean, that was actually going to be my next point as well. There's a lot of people under pressure there. Obviously, to perform your best under pressure, which you've managed to do previously in a sporting environment and in a business life as well. This book doesn't apply just to football managers. This applies to probably every man that's really struggling at the moment, every woman that has a business or working environment where they're under pressure, trying to provide for their family. This book will be a great foundation for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually aimed at the business person. And as you quite rightly say, you can be running a huge conglomerate. You can be running a corner store. Either way, you're under massive pressure. I mean, maybe even more so when you're a small business, because it's down to you. If you don't perform, the business fails. You don't take home money. So in that sense, the book is absolutely ideal for everybody. And as I say, we live with pressure. And I've seen great footballers like to drag them onto the pitch to play. And I've seen average footballers who can't wait to get out there and play. And one thrives under pressure and one falls apart under pressure. So the question is how and why. And the reasons are very, very simple. Framing things. I'll give you an example. At the end of last season, Manchester City won the title, and as you know, in the last kick of the game. So Alex's first interview, he said, "Congrats, Man City, but I'm so excited." And they said, "Well, how can you be excited? You just lost the league." He said, "Yeah, because next season we get to fight to win our trophy back." And straight away, rather than being negative and going into a dressing room where everybody was arguing with each other over who lost the league, he turned it around and really had people focusing on next season and being excited about winning the league trophy back.
Gary, I've got Richard in the studio who you probably remember. He'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah, Gary, when...
hi, Richard.
Hi, Gary. When we tend to think of Sir Alex Ferguson, obviously his infamous hairdryer treatment at half-time is obviously comprises a big part of his motivational factor with the team. I mean, how do you sort of transpose that sort of... that into your book, because obviously you can't have managers kicking around cups of teas at their employees.
Yeah, look, soccer's a little bit different. You've got 90 minutes, so I think we sort of understand that sometimes you've got to be a little bit wild to get the best out of people, and it's a combative arena, so you have to be equally aggressive. But what's interesting about the point you made is I talk about adaptability, and when I first played for United, Alex was the hairdryer, and then of course we had the Bosman ruling in '95. And all of a sudden, it wasn't that easy to screen the players. I mean, he still does it a little bit today, but nowhere near as much as he used to. So what he very cleverly did was he bought a player who screamed at the players on the pitch. And that player, of course, was Roy Keane. And that was a wonderful adaptation where he let Roy do the screaming. So he didn't upset players. Then he got a lot of foreigners, especially the Spanish players, Portuguese, South Americans who didn't understand him properly. Mind you, to be fair, I speak English and I still don't understand him properly. And so what he did was he got Carlos Queiroz in, who speaks 6 different languages. And so he adapted again. And the final adaptation, he was out here with Man United in South Africa in July, and I spent a week with them. I had the privilege of traveling around with him. And Mike Phelan was saying that he's changed the game because he's now 70. He can't run around as much. So he now delegates. He delegates virtually everything. And he just stands and observes and makes sure that all the people doing his work for him do it properly. So he's a great example of adapting over 26 years. And when you think back to the managers who started with him, I don't think there's one of them who's still around today.
Not that I can think of. Dominic, I think maybe the West Ham manager.
No, I can't. Stuart, you're a tad older. You might be able to come up with an answer there.
To what? To which part?
Well, which manager that's is still around when Sir Alex Ferguson started his career at Man United? So going back to '86.
My God, you had quite a mixture of managers there. Was Ron Greenwood still around there, or had he finished?
No, he'd finished.
No. Anyway,
I wanted to ask a question to you, Gary, if I may. Sorry, yes. Stuart in the studio. Just want to ask you if.
Hey, Stuart.
How can you tell a goalkeeper who's playing in front of a very, very large crowd and he makes an error in the first 10 minutes, if it's not his metabolism to stay calm, how can you create or how can you teach him, how to take deep breaths, or, how would you tell him to get over that? Because it must be the most nerve-wracking thing, because a goalkeeper stands alone.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, it is. But we know as keepers that if you try and put that mistake right by trying too hard, you'll make another mistake. So we say, look, just let it go. We'll talk about it after the match. Forget about it. In America, they have a little technique where they actually teach the young goalkeeper to pick up some grass, drop it in the back of the net, and say, that's the mistake, and it stays there. And at the end of the game, you're going to pick up the grass, you take it to your coach, and you say, okay, let's just go through this. It's just a very simple technique to teach kids, that you've got to put that mistake aside. But just to give you an example of another thing I talk about in the book, it's called reframing. And when you make mistakes, I got to the point after about 5 years at United where I was scared. I was scared of people shooting at me because I thought if I make a mistake, the whole world comes down on my back. And it was at a luncheon with some fans, there were some businessmen, who one day the guy said to me, why don't you stand in your goals and under your breath say, please shoot. Give me the chance to show you how good a goalkeeper I am. And I thought about it, and I started the 85 season saying that under my breath. And it's amazing how subconsciously your whole body changes. I was catching the ball better, making better saves. If you think back to 85, we won our first 10 games of the season, which is still a United record. We won the FA Cup in 85, made my England debut, went to the World Cup in 86. And I hadn't trained any harder. I'd simply taken something that was scaring me and turned it around and made it exciting. And that's what you have to constantly do as a goalkeeper and in business. If you're going to a meeting with a client and you're scared of meeting that client, you've somehow got to reframe it and say, hey, what a wonderful opportunity to show my business skills and try and convince the client. Because if you're negative about something, you are going to make an error. That's an absolute guarantee.
Gary, Dom back here again. I know you're under pressure, of course, well, time-wise, because you've got to go and sit in front of the television cameras and do what you do exceptionally well, present football, Bundesliga tonight on Supersport. Just going back to Succeed Under Pressure, your new book, many congratulations once again. All the greatest success for that, Gary. Where can the listener out there get hold of it? I imagine down the normal routes on the internet, Amazon, anywhere else that you can recommend that folks in Europe and in Spain can get hold of your book?
Well, yeah, Amazon's a good start. We are making an ebook and an audio book. I suppose the ebook's easier to download. And also you can go to our website, Success Under Pressure. Well, the book's called Succeed Under Pressure. It's the actual website, successunderpressure, all one word.com. And just see there where you can get more information about it. You can see some video clips of me doing talks. And, I just think it'd be wonderful for business people to read, because often business books are hard work. This is full of stories from the locker room, stories about players, fun situations. And so it's a very nice, easy business read. And obviously I'm selling the book, but I think it's well worth getting, because it'll be an ideal read for Christmas.
Gary, away from your book, quick question. There's been a lot of debate as to whether or not Sir Alex Ferguson should stick with one keeper or another and choose between De Gea or Lindegaard. And people are saying that until he does that, he's never really going to have a consistent defence. Do you agree with that? And if so, which of the two keepers would you pick?
Sure. It's a very good question. It's a difficult answer. I think still Lindegaard is better with the aerial ball. I think he commands his box better, but it's something that David De Gea is getting used to slowly. The English game, the challenges in the air, the sort of aggression that gets put on the goalkeeper from big centre forward. I think he's learning a bit at this stage. Lindegaard's probably a bit better there. I think De Gea is a wonderful shot stopper, and that's probably why Sir Alex is picking him, because he can see that as he gets to grips with the crosses, he'll turn into a fantastic goalkeeper. Whether he should put one against in place of the other, well, while they take chances, it's a real challenge. I mean, you don't want to lose that spot. So both goalkeepers are fired up to produce their best, and that's not a bad situation to have. Does it cause inconsistencies in defence? Yeah, probably occasionally as a defender. You're not quite sure whether it's Lindegaard coming strong for a cross ball or David, who's maybe not as forceful. But until David gets that consistency, I suppose the manager will have to keep alternating in the hope of making them both ultra-competitive goalkeepers as they fight for that number one spot. We have seen it before with England. If you go back to Shilton Clements, they even went to a World Cup in '82, and they had alternate games. But at some stage, I'm sure Alex is hoping that one of the two goalkeepers will play so well that they can't be dropped.
But who would you pick? That was the difficult bit.
It's very difficult. You know what? I would seriously do. I'd pick Lindegaard for Premiership, and I'd pick De Gea for Europe, because De Gea is ideal for Europe. You don't get challenged in the air in Europe, very rarely. Spanish players don't go for the high ball. Germans occasionally. Italians hardly ever. So I would play De Gea in the European games. I think in the hustle and bustle of the English Prem, especially against the likes of Stoke and Fulham, and teams are going to have a go at you, then I'd probably lean towards Lindegaard. But I've got to say the manager's got a great goalkeeper coach in Eric Steele, and he'll take advice there, and he'll keep pushing these goalkeepers, because he knows that De Gea's got the talent. He just wants him to learn how to really command his box.
Gary, Dom here again. Thank you so much. It's always fascinating to have you on the show to talk football, but even more fascinating to hear about your book. And once again, we wish you all the success with that. In 2 sentences, Gary, Chelsea versus Manchester United at Stamford Bridge. What's your feeling on that?
Well, it's the two informed teams. I mean, having seen Man City in midweek and seeing their defence crack up, I'm not so sure they're actually going to last the pace this season. They're in all disarray at the back. So it could be a Chelsea-Man United battle, in which case this match is of vital importance. But it's a marathon, as we know, and either team could win and not win the league. Yes, you want to put a marker down, and I think after Chelsea's loss in Europe midweek, United are catching them at a good time, and maybe they're beginning to doubt themselves a little bit. Whereas United seem to be getting stronger, and if they can just sort of keep it tight at the back, then I think United are looking in superb form. So Van Persie up front, Rooney, Hernandez looking sharp, Ashley Young about to come back. Wow, Sir Alex once again has created a wonderful squad, and I've got to say that they've got a good chance of going on to win the league this season.
Brilliant stuff, Gary. Thank you so much. We've squeezed you well over time there, but once again, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Look forward to having you on again.
Yeah, pleasure, Dom. Pleasure, guys. Keep well, eh?
Go well. Cheers, Gary.
Bye.
Gary Bailey, always fantastic to have Gary on the show. A real gentleman and fantastically knowledgeable about the sport. Of course, he fronts Supersport. Effectively, what Gary Lineker does in South Africa is what he does. So he gets to watch an awful lot of football. He's just actually about to sit down in front of the TVs and commentate on a Bundesliga game taking place. But that is Succeed or Success Under Pressure. Gary's new book, geared very much towards business, how you can produce your best performance under pressure in a business world. A fascinating book. It's available on Amazon. Gary's a top guy. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with it. Guys, nice to talk to Gary again, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's a top bloke, Gary, and a very, very good goalkeeper in his day as well. And we have talked about this before, and I think he was rather unlucky that, in terms of England had two fantastic keepers who, Shilton and Clements, who alternated, and really did keep him out of the team. But I mean, top international class keeper, Gary, in his day.
I think also, you threw me there on the question of managers. When I think of Alex Ferguson, I can't really put anyone in his role. I mean, Arsene Wenger, George Graham, over the years, I don't think anyone has done what Ferguson's done.
Not, no. I mean, Jim Smith hung around for a little while, didn't he?
At Derby, yeah. But
this is a special man. This, for what Fergie don't get, nearly lost his job early on in his management because nothing was going right, and then he triggered. He won a trophy, and where the man's gone today, I can't think of anyone, honestly, Rich, as I sit here in his shoes. I think he's just been one of the greatest managers of my